Formula Access. I have got a treat for you. A treat that has been in the works since the beginning. Since the beginning of the podcast, since before we really kind of got started. Margay Racing was gracious enough to lend us their showroom. Alpha 7 Even Media, which is a motorsports media company, also donated their equipment and resources and editing to provide you guys with one of the sharpest episodes that we have to date. This is the story of a young man coming up the ranks of the road to Indy. This is his parents. So from the moment he was 5 and got a go-kart under the Christmas tree, 15 years later to today, planning for his 2023 season, you guys, this is a really, really special, authentic episode of what that journey looks like for normal people. This is not a multi-millionaire, billionaire family who just chucks resources at their child's dream. This is a family that has sacrificed everything to get here. This is very reminiscent to me of the Lewis Hamilton story and what Anthony had to do to get his son to achieve his goals. I've walked this walk for the last, call it 2 years with them, and it's been a really, really incredible journey to watch, and I can't wait for the next chapter of their story. Guys, welcome, enjoy.
Todd, Amy, thank you. Thank you for spending some time and telling the audience your story. I think, I've known you guys for the past year and a half, 2 years. And I just, from the time that we stopped for a 30-minute cup of coffee that turned into 3 hours, I've just been fascinated by your story. And every time I'm around somebody, I'm regurgitating just the story in its general way. And as soon as I decided that I wanted to do this podcast, you guys were like top of the list. Like, you guys have to be here. So, thank you for coming, and thank you for just allowing you to put yourselves out there and tell your story.
I appreciate that. We're grateful. You might hear that word a whole lot today. I don't know what the over and under is on grateful, but I think I would take the over. We're super happy to be here, and thankful that you find our story interesting. We do. So.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Anytime you're around a group of people and the conversation of the world of motorsports comes up, it's something that people gravitate to. We were at a wedding last night, and as soon as we started talking motorsports with my son, immediately like a group of people came around. So I want this to be kind of a scaled version of that. It's like, what's your story? Tell the audience what it's like to be the parents of an up-and-coming driver that's, been doing this the right way for a very long time. Your story is wild. It's a long time. So explain to the audience who you are. Like, Todd, we can start with you. Like,
sure. I think the best way to explain it is I've spent the last 15 years of my life on an amazing journey with my family. I've had the unique opportunity to be at the track a lot over 15 years, and to be with my wife at the track for 15 years, and to be with our families at the track for 15 years. And the track could be everything from, the local go-kart track to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway to Brands Hatch to Silverstone and everything in between. And all of them have been meaningful to us. All of them have great memories. And I think that's just the best way to describe the last 15 years of my life. It's one of the things that I'm most proud of. It's one of the things I talk about the most. The opportunity to really spend that kind of time with your family. Set aside all the fantastic things and the uniqueness of racing, just being with family. I think my mom explained it best. She said, family picnics. We used to go to the park for family picnics. said, my family picnic now is at the track. So,
And it lasts for 4 or 5 days.
yeah. So, we got to
All
the point
day.
where
Yeah,
grandma
right.
was bringing cookies and just, the family picnics were at the track. That's success to me. I don't know that I could ask for anything more. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, but that's Todd Kohlbecker.
It's perfect because the bond of father-son is not only something that I've experienced, but every time I'm around the track, it is something that I witness, I see, I hear about in that connection. And, the more I engage motorsports, the more, I have begun to recognize the whole family, and as I understand it, you come from a line of motor racing. Like you
Yes.
have a family obsessed with motorsports.
Obsessed. So
And
I
so
grew up obsessed with
How
it.
did you get here?
So my dad and I, because I was the race fan in the family along with my dad, so we went all over the country all the time and went to lots and lots of races. And so I grew up going to tracks all over and loving every minute of the time that I spent with my dad, and then loving the sport that we were watching. So it was kind of a natural when my dad bought my son a go-kart when he was 4.
And that's where the story began, right?
That's where it begins. Yeah, at age 4 or 15 years ago. And, I think maybe one of the more unique things about that moment 15 years ago was that I was not a motorsports fan, really had zero interest in it. I grew up in a family of wrestling, football, baseball, the traditional sports. And when I met Amy, well, she wanted to go to the track and watch races, I said, there's no way I'm going to do that. There's no way. And so Amy would go to the races with anyone that would go with her. And that changed.
Once you get to see your kid do it.
That's really special. I think that is a feeling that I get more so because my son was in soccer. That's how we connected. And when he broke his ankle for the second time, stopped playing soccer, we kind of lost that thing that connected us. And we spent a lot of time talking about and doing, in club soccer, you're driving everywhere. You spend the whole weekend, at a soccer field or whatnot. And when that stopped, it was like that connection stopped. And then when we started go-karting, it started up again. And like that is actually how I felt, when that started up again, because as a motorsports fan myself, he started speaking my love language of motorsports. And, you're kind of like, wow, brake zones, accelerating, lap times, and, a tenth of a second here and a tenth of a second there. It was those conversations connected us again. And so I think that's special. How did the whole go-kart purchase start? Was that a Christmas present? Was it something that Spike wanted to do early
Yeah,
on?
it was. Spike is the grandson in the family, and Amy's dad and mother were motorsports fans. They were involved in all of the car clubs in St. Louis. Amy's mom, much like Amy, was very dedicated in organizing those car clubs. There's a registrar, and I think they had a genuine interest in at least exposing their grandson to the sport. And Christmas morning, 15 years ago, on the table, there was a red Margay go-kart. And yeah.
Which then meant my son thought he could stand on the table to crawl into the go-kart. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
We'll make an exception.
But it was a great day. We got the stickers out, started putting stickers on the go-kart, and didn't realize we were in way over our head. 15 years ago, getting into go-karting, there were a lot of barriers to entry. I had zero mechanical abilities. We had a 5-year-old son. Amy loved the racetrack. We knew where the racetracks were. There was one, south of St. Louis and one in Springfield, Illinois that we frequented. But to be fair, there were lots of barriers to entry. And that made it extremely tough. To be completely fair, I'd never turned a wrench before.
That makes it hard.
Yes, that is something in the first year of karting that I understand a wrench, I understand mechanics, but boy, when the sun comes out and it changes your entire setup, and the clouds come back out and it changes it again, or the kart's behaving abnormally and you don't know what to do and you're panicking, and he's falling down the ladder,
Yeah.
you get worried. So I understand that.
And we were worried about different things, like how do we get this go-kart off this table to the go-kart track?
Yeah.
No trailer, no truck, right? Like how's that all going to happen? So it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy.
I think this is an important part of the step, which is there's a go-kart for Christmas. You found a track or some tracks. Was there a season starting? Did you enter, like a friendly league, or was it competitive from the start? Like, how did you arrive from like he was winning karting to like the Christmas tree?
I think you want to take that one? It's a lot to unpack.
Well, I mean, to begin with, just to get the kart to the track was thankfully my mom had an SUV big enough that we could roll it in and put a few tools around it and off we would go. So that's how we very first started. But once you get to the track, you realize very quickly that you are in it to win it. And it quickly develops into more tools, bigger vehicles, and more help. Like Todd said, he didn't know how to tune an engine or, put on a tire or any of that stuff. And you're competing against dads who know those things, that are helping their sons. So for us, there was a lot of quick learning, and fortunately some people who, were very kind to us at the track and knew we were new and knew we didn't know what we were doing. And, when you're still new and you don't know what you're doing and you're not winning yet, there's a lot of people that are willing to help you.
It's easy to spot that, right?
Yeah.
They're working out of their trunk and not
Right.
a trailer.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I'm going to use that word grateful again. There were lots of folks that helped us along. Keith Freeber at Margay. Lots of folks at the track saw us struggling, and we knew enough to be dangerous. But what we did notice as we were going through the early chapters of that journey is that we really liked it. Yeah. It was different than anything that we had ever done. Anything we'd ever done as a family, as individuals. It's tough to explain, really tough to explain, but we were in it. And from there, it's, wait a minute, we need this, we need that, we need that. But I think what we were always careful with is that we would always pause periodically, whether that was at the end of the season, at the middle of the season, after a tough car ride home. We'd always pause and say, do we want to do this? Do we really want to do this?
let me unpack. When you say you want to do this, is this, Spike, do you want to be a professional race car driver, or do you want to get more competitive, or do we want to keep spending the weekend at the track?
I think we were very realistic with our goals all along, and our goals may have been different than many of the folks at the track. Our goal was to, are we having a good time? Are we improving? Are we excited about getting in the car and driving to the track? The drives home, we knew sometimes weren't going to be exciting, but were we happy to be there? Were we learning? Were we saying to ourselves, we should be, or we could be somewhere else? And so we were saying, do we want to get in the car next weekend, load the car up as a family, and go? Because we were committed to doing this as a family. And we said that to Spike, again, Amy being more knowledgeable about motorsports than I was, she was instrumental, with the timing and all the support of the track and guidance. And we had committed early on, it has to be family. We have to be willing to get in the car and be happy about it. Are we willing to do that next race, next weekend, next month, next season? The answer has been yes.
ever since. And how many years, where did it go? How did it elevate from fun to we kind of understand what's going on to all in? All in, I mean, like, let's shoot for the stars. Let's win championships. Let's travel. Let's.
I think that happened pretty quick. Well, he competed in the Kid Kart Nationals as a,
Yeah.
6-year-old, so.
Yeah, I think that's a good example of the milestones of we're all in. And then you think you're all in until the next milestone, and you have to ask yourself the same question again. Are we all in for the next level? And I think those are good examples. It's, big competitions. It's leaving on Christmas Day to go to Daytona Kart Week. It's, missing out on a family event that you really wanted to be a part of, and the family wants you to be a part of, but you need to pick your city, pick your state. It's, we need to get this trailer, we need this part, or we need to make these sacrifices to be able to do these things. Those milestones, I think, were a series of questions that you had to answer. Are we ready to be all in? Because I think about one of the bigger moments of being able to answer, are we all in? We were traveling back and forth. Spike had just started racing cars, Formula Ford, which is just a brilliant car class in Canada. And he was in an academically rigorous school. We were getting home from Canada at 2, 3 in the morning on Monday morning. He was turning around and going to class at 6:30, 7 o'clock on that same morning. And, he woke up one day and said, I can't do this. I can't do it. And so those are moments, I think, that we've tried to be really good at as a family. What does this mean? How do we, do we want to make an effort to adjust, to be able to say yes? Or is it time to say, okay? So I think we were good about that, right? We tried to be really careful about always sitting down as a family and saying, okay, this is tough.
Balancing life, yeah.
Are we ready to go to the next step? And I want you to dig into that a little bit more, because when we first had a cup of coffee, you were telling me this story, because you just glazed over it, but like really telling the story of what a race weekend looked like as a working professional. I mean, you're an actual executive for a major company, as a day job, as your full-time employment. So explain what a race weekend entailed as far as travel and logistics. And
yeah, and to be fair, Amy and I have had some really great folks, really great employers that we've had conversations with along the way, and they've said, "You're doing what?" So we've had lots of those conversations, and we've been, really blessed that we've had the opportunity to do it. We're not business owners. With all due respect, we didn't have that kind of flexibility, so we had to have those tough conversations with employers. I would say that the preparations for those weekends really changed from year to year. But back to the specific example where we thought we were at a stopping point, traveling back and forth to Canada. I mean, it was Amy and I were working until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, trying not to, in a hotel in Canada, trying not to wake up our driver, and make sure he's appropriately prepared for the following day, being supportive, trying to find the balance of being the parent and a race fan, and Uber driver, whatever we needed to be, at the same time trying to remain committed to faith, family, and our employers. And that hasn't always been easy. And I think that's what's brought us here today, is that we've not been afraid to do hard things.
Well, I think that's what it takes. It's a tough business. And I think, I do want to get into the business end of your experience, but I still think that there's so much more in your story of, going from, however many years of karting that you guys did to hitting Formula Ford, and then, what that entailed first, but like, what was the moment as a parent when, when it was kind of the spark went off and it was like, there's something here. This is more than just, a soccer game on the weekend or, a weekend at the track. Like there's something special here.
Well, I think for me, it's kind of funny in my mind, but I was the mom kind of always, wanting to hold him back. He's only 8. We don't need to move him up. He can stay in this class for another couple years. And then we had this, we were building this village of people around us that were motorsport people. And they're like, move him up, move him up. And so I'm like, oh. And so we'd have these dinners and, with these great people that have been super instrumental in advising us because we didn't know. And like, when is it appropriate to move them up? If they can stay in a class a couple more years, like, are they ready to be moved up? And, what does that look like? And so for me, I would always hear at the dinners, he's ready, let's move him up. And as a mom, I was, still saying, oh, he's fine where he is. And so I would say he was, I think through those mentors and advisors who knew about motorsports, like they were the ones that really helped kind of give me the wings, if you will, to let him go so that he could keep moving up at the appropriate pace. And that was, probably hard when he still seemed like my little baby, through a lot of that. He was little.
How old?
Well, and then he gets to Formula Ford. So he was 15 when he started that. But I guess I'm going even backwards to where, and then he starts winning national championships. And then, yes, that led us into Formula Ford in Canada initially at 15.
How do you juggle school? Because a 15-year-old still has schooling commitments.
Yeah. Not easy. The journey has not been easy, and I want to make sure that is back to being grateful. It hasn't been easy, and we're grateful that we are here where we are today. The schooling was tough, and I think I like what Amy said, and I think that's spot on. There have been a lot of people that have brought us here today, right? This is not Todd and Amy, husband and wife with a kid named Spike that enjoys motorsports and happens to be good at it, right? There are, this room could be filled with people that have been willing to help guide us with their time, treasure, and talent and everything in between. And I just, grateful. Back to the word grateful. Your question about the education, I think, is a good one in that we're back to this scenario, right, where we're at one of those pauses. We've come back from Canada, and Spike says, I can't do it anymore. And so we reconvene as a family, and we sat down around the table and said, what do you want to do? And Spike says, well, I want to drop out of school. I said, well, that's not an option. That's not an option.
Not I want to quit racing. I'm done with school.
Right.
Okay.
Let's racing thing. Let's keep doing that. This school thing. Let's exit that. Yeah.
I love it.
His mother wasn't too happy about that. But, again, we're talking about, a young man who's making some big decisions. And so we went to our local high school. It just so happened the principal at a high school was a high school acquaintance of mine. Okay. And so here we are again, sitting down with great people who have guided us. We're sitting down with the principal of the local high school, and we tell our story and say, we're thinking about moving to New Zealand for racing and taking school in New Zealand. And he catches his breath and and looks at us and says, I think we can make this work. And so online school, right? Online school before it was perhaps more mainstream than it is today. And Spike was the first student in the state of Missouri to take the online program called Launch internationally. They were great to him. The teachers were great to him. It's kind of feel like they're in this room with us today. Lots of people have helped us get to where we are.
So Formula Ford in Canada. Now we're talking New Zealand. So now as two working professional parents, with now you have the ability to do online school in an opposite side of the world. Now how do you manage the logistics of that? I mean, that's not a 2-hour Southwest flight. That's
36 hours.
Yeah, we flipped the coin and I lost. I got to stay back here in St. Louis in January and February, March and April. And, yeah, I think, back to our employers being very good to us. We told the story, and Amy and Spike packed up their bags and moved to New Zealand, and I stayed back with the dog, and our family separated.
How long was that season? That, not the racing season, but the season of being apart?
We're about 3.5 months that Spike and I were gone. And we lived with the race team in New Zealand. So that was a good and interesting experience and a bonding time, certainly, for Spike and I, to be living overseas without sort of, Todd always sort of in the mix. And you got to come over some.
Yeah, I mean, we made it work, right? It was different. It was a big commitment. You have those conversations again as a family. Are we sure this is what we want to do? A young man leaving his friends at a really important time in his life, right? A couple being separated, at a pretty important time in a child's life where parent guidance really matters. And family, right? Big decision. But it was one of those family conversations. And
It was a pretty awesome experience.
yeah.
So what was that series in New Zealand? So you've gone from Formula Ford to...
Yeah, New Zealand, the Kiwis are mad about their motorsports. And some of the best, racing on the planet happens on the North and South Island of New Zealand. And Formula Ford has very strong roots there. The tracks are very narrow, very competitive. It was just an ideal place to continue to build Spike's foundation. And so off to New Zealand we go.
And that was F4.
That was Formula Ford.
Formula Ford still.
Formula
Okay.
Ford in New Zealand. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you raced against some serious competition there.
Some, every driver in Formula Ford is brilliant racing. It's the equivalent of the Margay Ignite program in go-karting. Just really close racing. A lot about developing the driver. It's all mechanical grip. It was just fantastic. Every driver on any given day had a chance to win, and we just
A lot of this.
Yeah, it's
Every corner.
brilliant racing.
Yeah.
Because this is a proving ground for a lot of European junior formula drivers. Is that because it's in the off season of Formula Ford?
The beautiful thing about New Zealand is that not only they have a great Formula Ford program, but they also have this wonderful off-season program for Formula One hopefuls, and that's the F3 Toyota Racing program. That's a few chapters down. We weren't quite ready for that yet.
Okay, so then let's hold off on that.
Yeah, okay.
So you're in New Zealand for 3 months. Then what? Do you stay in New Zealand longer? Where did you go after that?
Came back home, right?
Yeah.
And I think, going back to what we tried to be true to is sitting down as a family and saying, do we feel like we've adequately, checked that box? And did we learn? Are we committed to taking, the next step? And we realized how much we really love Formula Ford racing. And where do you go next? Well, again, back to some mentors said, you need to go to the UK, the best Formula Ford racing on the planet. To have the opportunity to race at tracks like Silverstone and Brands Hatch and many other iconic tracks, Snetterton, others around the UK, you've got to go. You got to go to the UK and you've got to race Formula Ford. And the countless open wheel drivers that have really earned their stripes there in the UK. And off we went again. But this time, we just sent our kid.
How was that?
I'll let his mom answer that one.
Well, we never heard from him. Once he was on the plane, it was like, okay, talk to you in 6 months.
And this is before Zoom and
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
the immediate communication we have globally now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he could have texted, but he didn't. But the cool thing for us was he went and lived in a small little village outside of London with his race team. He was 16 at that point, and Todd and I went back and forth 13 times in 6 months for the race weekends, which is, about 4.5 or 5 days of racing and practice. So it was an interesting time for us. We got the travel down to a science. We'd get to Philadelphia. We'd work all day from the lounge. We'd fly all night. We'd get in the morning. We'd go straight to the racetrack. I mean, we kind of got it down to as quick of a trip as possible. And then we did that 13 times, and our son had a really great season there, and then came back to America. And that was sort of the whole plan, was bring him back to America, and then sort of, oh no, because then from there he went to New
We're
Zealand.
going to have one of those conversations.
Oh, right. And then we went to New Zealand. So then that's when we went back to New Zealand.
So who's the lead? This sounds to me like this is the preparation in advance of the next season. When you have the sit down, what do we want to do? Do we want to keep doing this? Like who's actually leading this conversation?
It's a fair question. I try to be really careful not to say, here's the plan. And I will say that Spike has done a remarkable job, right? We want to be grounded in the importance of being good parents and raising our child to be, a good contributor to society and independent and all those kinds of things. And so as we're going through that journey, we're sort of pivoting and giving the baton to him and letting him drive those conversations. And it was right about that time, just to expound on your question, we had some concerns. Here's a young man who's given up more friends, more high school experiences. He's living in a small village in the UK. And when I mean small, like, 100, 150 people small. And his parents were sort of questioning some of our decisions, right? Was this the right thing to do for our child? And one day he answers the question that we had asked him, how are you doing? Are you making friends? Because sort of the back part of the season, we're a little worried, like, have we done the right thing? And he said, I went to the store and I bought a soccer ball. I go to the park at night, I kick the ball around, and the kids come out of the houses.
All ages.
6 to 86 and everyone in between. And he said, I'm organizing the town soccer parties tonight. Love it. And we just looked at each other and said, okay, we're okay. We can go back to being happy parents again and not being so worried. So, yeah.
So you have the dinner or the conversation, and then what's next? You're in America. You've been to New Zealand. You've been to the UK. Now what?
Yeah, we get a phone call from some folks that we'd met in New Zealand, and I said, here's an opportunity. It's a F3 car in New Zealand, Toyota Racing Series. It's where the Formula One hopefuls come. It's the off season. It's it's an intense 5-week program. We think it's a massive, massive jump for Spike. And we want to make sure that you guys know, just to be realistic, but we'd love to have him as part of the program. And so we said, let's go back to New Zealand. Let's do it. And
Did you
it
win
was
the coin flip this time?
I lost the coin flip again. But again, being grateful, did have a chance to go down and see my son race against the likes of Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson, a lot of other fantastic open wheel drivers. And he did remarkably well. but that was a big test, right? It was another one of those boxes we felt like we had to check. Are we prepared to move to the next level? This wasn't, let's just, with all due respect, let's write a check to move up. This is, have we earned our way? Have we earned the right, to race at this level? And won most improved driver of the year, had a great New Zealand Grand Prix, qualified third, out-qualified some of the folks that you see on the F2 and F1 grid today. So it was great.
So when you do that, because motorsports is not always about winning every single race. Do phone calls start coming in at this point? I mean, at this point, he's arguably at the world stage. He's won championships, traveled the world, raced with some pretty big names out there. I mean, do phone calls start coming in for F3, IndyCar? I mean, F2.
When he qualified P3 at the New Zealand Grand Prix, the phone started ringing. And it was the European teams. They were watching. And it was humbling, right? Like, look, we've been racing Formula Ford, this big slick and wing, beautiful car. We're in over our skis here, right? Like we were getting better. Spike was getting better every weekend. And that New Zealand Grand Prix put him on the map. It was I wasn't there, but I watched it on TV.
You got the phone calls.
I had the phone call.
Did he?
Yeah.
Okay, so the phone calls start coming in, and I think this is a good kind of point to really talk about. Of course, I know a lot of the story, but when these phone calls start coming in, these are not, people aren't coming to you guys with $10 million contracts, to pay him to come over here. And, you've not done all of this on paychecks. I mean, you guys have paid for this, and anybody listening knows that doesn't come cheap. Like what are the sacrifices that you've had to make to get here? I mean, what have those benchmark costs been, kind of jumping from place to place?
Let me take a shot at that.
Sure.
I'll try to answer the question. Redirect me if you want to. I think we had made some sacrifices to get to that point. Some of those things personal. We knew that, but we wanted to do them. To be fair, right? This wasn't a fight. Right. It was that conversation that we prepared, instead of doing this, do we want to do this? It were those kinds of questions. But it's at that point we knew that going to Europe was going to be very economically challenging. To your point, it was we'd love to have you on the team. This is what it will cost. And to be fair and to be respectful of those European teams, I think they had a keen desire to have an American driver on the team, which was unique, right? It's we were very respectful, honored that they called, but we had to say no, and we said no to many of them. We said no to all of them. It wasn't realistic for us.
Was that to go into Formula 3, Formula 4 too?
Yeah, there was Formula 3.
Okay.
Several of the teams in
Just wasn't financially feasible.
It wasn't feasible. And maybe to be completely fair, that would have been another one of those big jumps where we prepared for it. But it almost didn't matter, because we it was never a question. We could do it. Just financially, it wasn't an option for us.
So what do families do? Any Formula 1 or IndyCar driver has to arrive at that point. And
yeah,
what do drivers do? What do parents do?
Yeah,
to provide that pathway for their child.
Yeah, I think we had to, to look at what we were willing and could financially do and, figure out what the gap was. The gap was pretty significant. And then back to those folks that have been very good to us that that I think about candidly most every day. We had to go ask. We had to go ask for money. And we had to find a series that was appropriate for the budget that we thought we could attain and appropriate for the skill level of the driver. We wanted to make sure that we continued to check those boxes, that we were prepared to move forward. And I remember sitting down with some friends and saying, we're back to your earlier question. We're all in as a family. We're gonna go ask people for money. And I remember, we sat down with some friends for dinner and people that we know and trust. And without exception, everyone that we ask, go for it. And so we did.
Okay, so for those that are listening that don't understand the structure of that, you basically have three options. It's either you write the check, a sponsor writes the check, or somebody invests in future earnings. So I mean, how are you even learning this stuff? Like how do you as parents say, okay, somebody needs us to write a $400,000 check?
Yeah.
For him to get to the next level. How do we come up with that?
Yeah. I don't think we were afraid to ask a lot of questions, and credit to some folks that maybe if they're listening to this, they'll know. There were some folks that are, competitors to this day that answered the phone and said, here's some ideas. And again, being grateful for that because there are a lot of trade secrets in motorsports, right? But we weren't afraid to ask a lot of people, a lot of questions. And we went on a sort of a quiet campaign, if you will. Here's what we're thinking about doing next year. Would you be interested in supporting a kid from St. Louis?
Following this dream. That was so
Following the
awesome.
dream.
Yeah.
A local kid in St. Louis that wants to represent St. Louis and the businesses and the people and the families that support him. Do you want to be a part of that? And people started saying yes. Right. And again, I'm humbled, right? Because time, treasure, and talent. We found that people were willing to give of all those three things. And this wasn't just me going and sitting down with people. It was us as a family. It was Spike individually. It was a combination of all of the above, asking people, here's what we're trying to do. We got a St. Louis kid that's trying to make it big. Do you want to be a part of that? And what we heard was interesting. This almost without exception, everyone said, never thought I'd be a part of something like this. Didn't know it existed. I am compelled by the story and want to be a part of something different.
That was my next question. Do you feel like people believed in the story or the previous results? Did they even ask what his results were? Or was
I
it
think
like
the amazing part was the people that really did contribute significantly to him and really were super excited to get behind the whole story were people that knew nothing about motorsports. So, and the cool thing about that is, like, some of them became huge motorsport fans because of it, because they now have a person to follow. They have their driver that they really care about. And once they came to the track and they saw what a race weekend was actually like, and all of the complexity of it and the intensities of it and the training that Spike's put in for, a decade, and, how hard, there's so much more to the race than just the moment you're on the track. And I think it's hard for people to comprehend that until they're on the back of our golf cart going from corner to corner and getting to see how difficult it is, or being on the track in a golf cart during the track walk and getting to see what it's like to be on the track themselves. And they're like, oh, wow, this is completely different than it looks on TV, because it's a lot more undulating and rolling, and, and you can't pick up all that kind of stuff. And then they're like, oh, I realize how much harder this actually would be to be on track than.
The driver
So-
has something to do with it, right?
The driver does have something.
So up until this point, we're in New Zealand. We've come back to America. Like, what has been your favorite of all to this point? I mean, where did you feel like the most growth occurred, and kind of
Yeah,
most connection?
it's the question, right? My son, my daughter, my cousin, my niece, my nephew, they want to get into motorsports. What do you recommend? And of course, we're big believers in go-karting. There probably hasn't been a day that's gone by in the last 15 years where there probably hasn't been the word go-kart mentioned. That's a little bit crazy, but yeah, it's the foundation of motorsports, right? And that sounds a little cliche-like, but I think one thing really important about go-karting is it allows you, the driver, you, the parent, you, the supporter, to be able to check the box. Are we having fun? Are we learning? Are we ready to take the next level? And karting itself, right, just seems like has just a ton of momentum here in the U.S. And look, you can spend as much time and energy as you want in the sport of karting, and have hopefully some great memories like we have. So karting for sure. Now, to be candid, I really wish that there was a larger presence of Formula Ford here in the U.S. It's not a particularly sexy car. There aren't any wings on it, but it is just a brilliant car for a driver to learn how to drive. Really,
It's a good stepping stone.
it's a great stepping stone back. Again, at the risk of repeating myself, check the box, right? Are we having fun? It's higher speed. It's closer racing. It is super, super competitive. Or at that point, maybe you have an interest in sports car racing, and there's lots of opportunities for that. So I think it's a good time to be asking that question in the United States. How do I get into motorsports? There are lots of opportunities, I think, that may be a little different than what we had 15 years ago. And someone might say different than it was 30 years ago or 50 years ago. What we know is 15 years ago. And it feels like there are a lot more opportunities to be able to check those boxes and answer those questions. Am I right for motorsports? Is this what I want to do? How far do I want to take it?
Mm-hmm. So you're in America. I imagine you sit down. What do we do next? Do we want to keep doing this? Then what?
We go ask for supporters, and I could tell you, we could tell you, there were some trials and tribulations in those conversations, because kind of wearing our heart on our sleeves, right? We're going to people and saying, look, we've had a great journey here, but we can't afford it, right? And again, we're incredibly blessed, fortunate, but we just have to tell you, right? And we were transparent with people, how much money we had, how much we had spent, how much we could spend, what sacrifices we had made. Some of those things are very personal. But we decided that was fair and appropriate to the people that might be interested in supporting Spike. And people started saying yes.
Significantly, yeah.
Significantly. And then so we moved to F4 here in the US and raced F4, and it was a great experience. Just again, great racing, very competitive, different than the Toyota Racing Series F3 car, certainly different than Formula Ford. But we were racing in the US for the first time, racing on US tracks for the first time. Spike had never really raced on US tracks, so big disadvantage, right? He shows up at Road Atlanta or Barber Motorsports Park, and his competitors may have seen it 15, 20, 30, 40 times. Spike's like, I don't even know where I am. Right? Yeah, this is Alabama, and but again, it was great, a great experience.
How quickly did he adapt to Formula 4?
Well, I think he would tell you every car is different.
Mhm.
This is what he's, explained to me. Each car is different. There's definitely a learning curve for each car at each track. And, I think he always said that the F3 car that he drove in New Zealand was the most challenging car for him to drive of the cars he's driven so far. But I think they each have their own set of uniqueness. And, you can't just jump in one and assume they look similar, they're going to handle the same way. So for him, and he's very methodical about how he wants to go about learning. And so, it takes them a little bit of time to adjust, I think. And that's a good thing that we have a lot of practice in America before you actually have to go out and race, because that's a nice benefit, since we as a family can't afford to, just go and rent tracks out, which, some drivers are able to do that. And so we would always have to use all the time on the track would be, during a regular season experience as opposed to off season.
So he's had to be resourceful.
Yeah, but I think there's some good things about that, right? Again, how quickly can you adapt? Some good life lessons in that, right? How quickly can you adapt and apply that to motorsports or life in general? And I think that's an important thing to assess and grow.
How did that season go?
Went great. Yeah, went great. Like I said, there was some fantastic racing, and finished on winning races, and finishing on the podium at the end of the year. Winning at Coda, winning at Barber, just iconic tracks, and it really allowed us to once again sort of come back and assess. Are we making the progress we want? Are we happy? Was it sitting down at the table again, right? Those family conversations. Are we ready to move forward?
Now, when you say move forward, are those conversations easier to have when you kind of finish a season like that? Are there more options on the table? Kind of better deal structure for taking the next step in the ladder?
I think so. I think it also just gives you, as a driver or as a family supporter, more confidence. And there's also, maybe some driver preference that comes along. I like this car. I didn't particularly like that car. I have an interest in this car over here. And you want to develop those interests and those skills by driving a variety of cars. So we were always looking to continue to build the foundation and not make things particularly easy for Spike. Back to, what I said earlier, do hard things, right? Do hard things.
Has there ever been an overall objective? So when the kart ends up under the tree to today, has there ever been an ultimate goal? I want to be a Formula One driver. I want to be an IndyCar driver. I want to be a NASCAR driver. Like, has there ever been one main objective, or is it just to get to the top of one of those rungs?
It's a surprisingly difficult question you just asked, because I think that the natural response, and candidly our response for a long time, and probably still part of the answer, is, look, if you're in open wheel racing in the United States, you want to be on the grid for the Indianapolis 500. You want to represent your supporters, your family, your sponsors, your city, your state, your country. You want to be on that grid. And I think if that response didn't hold true for any young woman or young man that jumps into an open wheel car, I would be surprised, because I think that's utopia. On the same hand, I think we've had, I'm exaggerating a little bit, we've had hundreds of other goals along the way, some of which, probably not appropriate to share here, personal things, but I think as parents, we had some objectives for our son. Along this journey, we couldn't forget that we were raising a child. And it was easy sometimes. My son is the, he's the driver, he's the product, he's the what? No, he's our son, right? And so there were lots of parenting objectives along the way. And look, we race to win, right? And I think if any driver said anything other than that, I would be surprised as well. But are we learning? Are we developing? And, have we really checked the box?
You guys leading up to this point, I mean, you're arguably spending a fortune every season. Your investors are investing, your sponsors are supporting. Are there ever like doubts that enter your mind of either of you as parents? I know it's like it's your child and you will literally crash through this brick wall to create a path for them. But like, do you ever sit and say like, is college a better option, or is like some other series a better option, or, and then at the end of that question is like, where does the motivation then come from to say, no, we're going to get him there. He's going to get there. We're going to do whatever it takes to achieve that.
I think for me, I have to have like some faith in there that this is going to, like, I know that he has these amazing goals. And, sometimes when I'm like, we can't just write the check. So how is this going to happen? I just have to believe in my faith to think that it will happen because it's been happening. And, through a lot of hard work and a lot of determination. But then, it's been amazing to us that people, like I said, who have no motorsport interest have really wanted to get behind him and his story to get him, to his dream. So I think that is where faith comes in for me, like, this will happen. You don't always know the path.
Yeah. I think that in getting to know you guys, I think that's always been your greatest asset, is to have multiple objectives. Because, I think if it's like, I want to be a Formula One driver. Well, these are 20 people in the world, and the probability of like, when you look at guys, Daniel Ricciardo, arguably one of the best drivers, most commercially valuable people, might not have a drive next year, and then to think like, is that an option? Is it realistic? Watching, Chasing the Dream on F1 TV, you're seeing 20 or 30 kids a year trying to get through F2, and 19 and probably 20 of them on the grid don't ever get to that objective. And you guys have always had this very clear, it's just the next step in the ladder, and I think the overall message that I've always heard from you is Indy 500. We want to be on the Indy 500. We want to be on that grid.
Yeah.
And I think that's special.
Yeah. Yeah. It is special. And we've been grateful to experience in our minds, a lot of those Indy 500s around the planet. Whether it's Mosport in Toronto, Canada, Silverstone, pick your track, all the beautiful tracks in New Zealand, Brands Hatch, Indianapolis Motor Speedway. There have been lots of Indianapolis 500 grids in our mind, and we just feel incredibly blessed. But more blessed to know that in the journey that we've been on for 15 years, that we're still focused, on faith, family, supporters, the people around us, the mentors. Like, at the risk of using the analogy again, this room would be filled top to bottom with people that have provided us guidance, and it wouldn't be possible without them.
I've been to a race with you guys before. I know all the people that follow you around the country. That's special.
Village,
It
for
does.
sure.
Yeah, it takes a village.
So following that, USF Road to Indy. You've done that for 2 seasons. You know, is this now the path, the direction?
It's a fair question, and we've been asked that a lot. We have a team/family policy of not talking about it until the end of the season, and our decisioning process perhaps is different than, with all due respect, of a lot of different drivers and families. Right, it takes significant funds to be on that grid. So stay tuned. But I will tell you that we were in Portland, and someone that had never met Spike came to watch Spike race, and he cornered me in the middle, literally cornered me in the middle of the weekend, up against the fence, and he says, "You've got an incredible story, and your son has an even better story."
And he committed.
So we'll see where that goes.
It's incredible. So hindsight is always 2020. Okay, this is, and I don't want this to be like this is where we failed, but this is like 15 years. What would you have done differently?
What do you think, huh?
I don't know.
You got
I don't know.
you got to remember there are so many people listening, that watch the news, that read stories, and it's, I race go-karts, I go to Formula 4, Formula 3, Formula 2, Formula 1, or I race go-karts and I, rung up the road to Indy and I race an IndyCar. And, you guys have to me, a more realistic story of how you've gotten there. You've kind of had to pivot, you've kind of had to make some adjustments. And, for the majority of humans on the planet, writing $1 million checks every year and renting tracks is unattainable, and I think it's important to look back and especially for young families, or, imagine yourself 15 years ago listening to this conversation. What advice do you have? What do you have out there for somebody?
I think well, you touched on this before, but it's such a difficult sport to sort of break into because there are so many things to learn and know. And I do think for, Margay, the Ignite class, has helped that. I mean, that was part of the goal for that, so that it wasn't such a difficult sport to break into. And so we didn't have that. We were breaking in when, the karts were, everyone had different brands, and, it was just a completely different world then. And I think, when you ask, hindsight's 2020, I think I look at it more from the approach of what all did we learn? I mean, there's big highs in racing. There's also big lows in racing. There's in racing, there's good luck sometimes in racing. Sometimes there's bad luck in racing, and sometimes you have no control over either one of those things happening. So I just think that there is a lot of learnings that happen no matter what, and you've chosen the path, so you want to make the most of what happened in every corner of every race at every track. And I feel like, there's engineers and mechanics and people, that are in Spike's pit that are helping him understand all of that. Like, he's way beyond us. So I think we try, as a family, we tried to make the most of what did happen. And how do we take that with us and make it better? How do we learn from it? The life lessons you learn from this sport go so far beyond, can I drive a race car fast? I mean, infinite amount of learnings for him that he will carry with him for his entire life, and we will carry with us. So
Yeah, that's spot on. Have we had tough times? Have we made sacrifices? Yes to both of those questions. Have there been moments where like, what the heck are we doing? There's been those moments, but we are who we are today because of what happened yesterday and every yesterday for 15 years. Not changing that.
What do you guys feel as parents got you to this point? Like, family's important. Our family we're very connected. And so what is it that you feel like that you've done since day one to today that's contributed to the success, or that you wouldn't change for any result?
Well, for one thing, we have an only child, so it does make it easier to pour all of our energy, talent, treasure into that one individual.
I'm an only child. I get that.
Yeah.
I'm good.
But you have 2 kids, so you know how if you have 2, then you have to make it equitable and fair, and how do you balance all that out? When you have multiple children, and so I think for us, having one child helped us to, I guess to just be able to pour 110% in and day out, and not be distracted with something else. I don't know.
It's a good answer.
Yeah. I won't try to expound on that.
What I think as an outsider, what I've always noticed is just how close you guys are. It's even knowing you guys, but also just, again, hearing the story again. I think every time I hear it, I learn something new. It's just the family dynamic of, it's almost always done in unity. It's never, Spike, you're going to do this, or, Dad, I want to do this. And, it's always in unity, and there's never, that I can see where, it's 1 against 2, or, 2 against 1. We sit down after every season and we say, do we want to keep doing this? And I think that, any person that I've talked to that is starting this journey, in this journey, is always just that, is like, the racer is not a product, it's your son, and it should always be that. And I think you guys have truly exemplified that in the years that I've known you, and the races I've been able to attend. So every season, so you guys have 2 years USF, you guys have done, many, I guess, multiple seasons and a series. Has it always been with the same team? Has it always been in different teams? I mean, how do you even pick that? Because like, if I'm going into Formula One or IndyCar, like, I pretty much could tell you with the flip of a hat, like, who I want to race with. But when you start getting into these teams that are, they're televised on streaming internet, they're not well-known brands or teams. How do you pick?
It's a good question. And it really, it varies significantly, not only from season to season, but, sometimes from series to series. The job of a team owner is, extremely difficult, right? We could spend hours talking about that. That's a topic for a team owner that might be on your show someday. But, what we've tried to do is just be very grounded in every team brings something different, right? A different set of skills, different background, different philosophies. And no one team is going to have an absolute 100% match with any magic wand that you would have about this is utopia. But that's the beauty of it, right? You have to go into it, really understanding and appreciating this team owner, this mechanic, this engineer, this member of the sport team. They're all going to be different from the last one. What can we learn from them? And so I think every year, including this year, I've been able to say our son, Spike, learned more this year than he did, last year. It's a different set of learnings. Doesn't mean it was better or worse, just a different set of learnings from year to year, compounded over time. And I think that's what really makes, I think, a very accomplished driver. Sure, there's the great long-term connection between engineer and driver, and that's a recipe that's often, measured in success. I also think there's some benefits in drivers really understanding and appreciating the ability to work with different folks, different teams, engineers, team owners, and mechanics. And Spike's been fortunate to be able to do that. And I think because of that, his attitude showing up at the track is arguably pretty well-rounded.
What creates a good team dynamic or a bad team dynamic? I mean, I think one of the most misunderstood things with, from the outside is that it is all the driver, and if you do end up in a particular series and you don't win every race or you don't win the championships, you're a bad driver. So, me personally, I believe that the team has a lot to do with that. And so, what creates success and what creates hardship where a driver's talents aren't showcased?
I'm going to answer that.
And it could be your experience or something you witnessed on the paddock.
I think a driver has to develop skills at an early age to really understand what's happening with the vehicle I'm driving. What's happening with the go-kart I'm driving? Is one tire off on tire pressure? How's the front end acting? Those skills are 100% transferable. Pick your age, from 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, 15-year-old drivers into the highest level of motorsports. And so when you have a driver that has the ability to really understand the car, the behaviors of the car, and an engineer that has the ability to interpret those and input it into the car and make those changes, it's where
like a beautiful
it's where the
dance.
magic happens.
Yeah.
Not to get off topic, but there is no bigger team sport than motorsports.
Couldn't agree more.
Nothing even close. If one person on the team, choose any of those folks that we've talked about, is not in sync with the rest of the team, forget it. And that's why you see, that's why you see some challenges in the highest level of motorsports, right? Drivers often don't suddenly become underperformers, right? There's something missing. If you're performing at that very, very high level, it's a team sport. And arguably the most important, the most complicated team sport.
Well, when you're talking about tenths or hundredths or even thousands of seconds, where we know, what's the closest race ever finished within 10,000ths of a second of, like that. So
Everything matters.
it does matter.
I remember qualifying, I think the whole field was separated by something like 0.3 of a second.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
So you can throw a blanket over that.
Yeah. I think, if I have my facts straight, in New Zealand, at the New Zealand Grand Prix, the difference between qualifying on pole and sixth was 6/1000ths of a second. That's 6 cars, within 12 inches of each other at 145 miles an hour or something. My math isn't very good, but something crazy like that.
better than mine. I couldn't have even arrived that close. I mean, what's been Spike's favorite series leading up to this? Where have you seen him shine?
I think if he were here answering that question, I think he would probably say there's been bits and pieces of every series that he's really loved and appreciated. I can hear him now saying, I love my karting days. I loved Formula Ford, racing Formula Ford, Brands Hatch. I love F4 and Coda. I loved, having my supporters, follow me around the United States when I finally had a chance to race here in the U.S. Even in the midst of COVID, people were
still coming.
people were coming to watch him race. Like, that's just unbelievable, right? Like how many times can you thank people like that? Not enough. And we're still trying to find ways to thank him. So I think he would say there's something in every series that he's like. I hope he would.
If you could go back to the Christmas tree, would you do it all over again?
Well, we have a little joke in our family that, we're like, well, we blame our parents for this, but in reality, we love it. Yeah, we wouldn't have changed it.
No.
It's the only sport that I have been around where entire families, and we're mainly at kart tracks, but like the mom, the sisters, the brothers, the dads, like they're all helping, wrench something out, take a cart over, fill up a gas tank, go grab new tires.
And the little ones can't wait until they're old enough to get into the sport.
Exactly. It's the most connected I've seen a family. It's like a team.
Yeah.
Whereas more organized sports is kind of like drop them off and pick them up.
Now, some of those decision points about moving up that we've talked about involve the family too, right? At what point is the family willing to give up components of that?
When did you give up the wrench?
I
Long time ago.
I gave up the wrench a long time ago. I got fired many, many times. But I distinctly remember, being at Brands Hatch when Spike was racing Formula Ford in the UK. The wrench was long gone, but we were in the pits and he walks up to us and he said, "No more.
He said, go be a spectator.
Go be a spectator." Kick this out.
Whew. Okay.
Amy was relieved. I was like, I can clean the car. I could do something, But
So we
he's
went
16 years old and
stands.
said, "You guys are out."
How do you not get, I don't know, how do you not go in the trailer and start dissecting data?
Yeah.
Well, you're not allowed at that point. So
When
Yeah.
you get into open, like
Bad. There's not a lot of room for bad parents in professional motorsports, and that
not bad parents, just parents.
parents in general. Yeah, right. Parents in general. So, fortunately, we got the message early on that go watch the race, enjoy it.
Well, to his credit, he said, he explained this actually to another parent who, when we were living in New Zealand, and this father was very, very, very involved, like so controlling over his son's racing. And his son was a really good racer, but you could tell that the son was underperforming because of the pressure, intense pressure. And I saw it, like he would just yell at the kid. And this is in F1600. And it's like, the kid just was so afraid of what the dad was going to say when he came off the track that he just couldn't get his mind around it when he was on the track. And so Spike tried to the dad came to Spike and had this conversation with him. And Spike had this very mature conversation with the dad. And he said, we have all the experts. You're paying for all the experts to be around us that know exactly what to tell us to do and how to do it. And to have a parent to try and come in who doesn't know the sport and trying to, like us trying to say how to take a corner. Well, we don't know how to take a corner, And anyhow, he would just say that let the experts teach us and tell us and guide us. And it's best for the parents to just, watch from the sidelines. And
Yeah, I think it was appropriate, right? I think.
the dad was appreciative, actually.
Yeah, and the dad was appreciative.
Believe it or not, yeah. But the dad actually came to see, Spike and this driver were friends. And so the dad actually was seeking Spike out to understand, like, am I out of line to be, yelling at my kid? And Spike, in a very mature way, tried to explain how difficult it is when you're on track and all the things, all the input that's in your mind that you're trying to execute.
By the way, and I know I've told you guys this before, but Spike is the most mature, now 19-year-old person that I've ever come across. And it's even gone as far, Spike has helped my son out, at races, and he'll call like the night before and just kind of tell him what to eat and how to prepare and stuff like that before race day. And I remember the last time Spike called Kyle, we were out shopping, and And we ended the call, and my son goes, "He's really only 19 years old." I was like, "Yep, it's pretty wise, pretty mature, isn't he?" And
Yeah.
he's like a full-blown adult. So good job.
Appreciate that. Back to those important milestones in the journey, right? At the end of the day, we want to be parents, and we want a child that is, is ready to do great things in the world.
I couldn't agree more. So I get this question all the time. So it is, I'm X years old, 4 years old, 14 years old, 50 years old, and I want to be a professional driver. From your vantage point as a parent, like, what does it actually take to achieve that? I mean, you're 15 years into your journey, and you're still not there yet. So, I mean, what is your baseline? Like, if you were going to tell somebody that asked you that question, what's your response to that?
Got to push through all the hard moments, and because the glory moments are pretty amazing, but in racing, you're only as good as your last race. So you have your super exciting highs and your wins and these amazing learnings, and then the very next race there could be an incident or something, and you're still going for a win, and so you got to push through that. Like, mentally, you have to put that behind you and then get straight back into the next race.
I like that. I think, one of the messages that I, always respond with is, you've chosen the most difficult profession on the planet. Are you sure that's what you want to do, right? I firmly believe that. I think it's the most difficult profession on the planet. I'm fortunate. I know people connected with, professional sports, and I know the challenges that professional athletes have, and I would argue that they're magnified in motorsports. So yeah, think about it, right? Roughly 6,000 minor league baseball players, and how many open wheel drivers in North America? Are there 100, 200, driving Formula Fords and USF 2000, Indy Pro, Indy Lights? It's probably less than 200, 150 drivers all in all those classes. 6,000 minor league baseball players and 150 or so
From around the world.
Yeah, like this.
That are
You've
racing.
chosen the most difficult profession. Stop, pause every once in a while, and make sure you're ready for the next step.
And you're starting to see the road to Indy become a pathway for a lot of European drivers too. So I expect this. I always thought that was an amazing example that you've given, because I've heard that from you a couple of times, and I think it's an amazing example of the difference between Major League Baseball, the NFL, to open wheel sports in the U.S. or even Europe.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
So USF 2000 follows the big show, IndyCar, all over the country. And you're there. I've been to a race where you can go from Spike's trailer to sport cars to IndyCar. What's been your pinch me moment? Like, I can't believe I'm here.
Every time we go to a racetrack, every time. It's pretty amazing.
We try to be very grounded, and every time we walk into a paddock, we just Amy and I look around and say,
I get chills. Yeah.
we're back. Doesn't matter where it is, we're back. There are cars, there are people pursuing their dreams, there are young women, young men, people that have, and everyone has a story, right? I think ours is pretty unique. I would argue it's probably one of the more unique ones, but everyone is really chasing the dream.
I think it's the most relatable. I feel like I've been in a position to hear a lot of stories. And to me, it always feels the most relatable, because you're normal people. You're not trust fund billionaires. You're not, money doesn't grow on trees in your family. And I think that's an important aspect of your journey, is it's been within reason. And, even for our household, when our kids want to do something, it's like, there's pie. you know, and there's only so much pie that you can take. So one thing sacrifices another. And I think that your story encapsulates that, because you have to grind it out and you have to make fiscal decisions that other people don't.
Yeah. And because of that, our life experiences are treasured, invaluable. The people that we've met, the folks that have supported us, our experiences, priceless.
What didn't you expect along this journey?
It was really hard.
It was really hard.
And it's still hard. Yeah. Yeah, there've been lots of those moments, right? I think I'm just gonna be completely candid. You know, we were in an event not too long ago, motorsports events, and you know, I was telling the story to one of our supporters, and I said, you know, there are a significant amount of people here, 75% of people that don't have to, you know, really work hard at raising funds. And with all due respect, those, you know, it's different, not better, not worse. It's different for those other 25% of the folks that really have to dig in. And Amy said, it's not 25%, it's 5%. And so, but we're not afraid, right? We're not afraid. We're very proud of what we've done. We're had some great friends, great experiences. Grateful, extremely grateful to have been on this journey. No regrets, and happy to be, you know, at any racetrack with any driver. And that's when we, you know, any event, any series. That's back to my mom's word.
The picnic.
What do you guys think is the most misunderstood aspect of sponsorships? Because I feel like motorsports is growing at an unbelievable rate stateside here. I think globally, but you know, the US, it's been more impacted. It seems like so many drivers struggle with finding sponsors. You know, what do you I mean, you guys engage in more than I ever have.
Yeah. We have some trade secrets. we think we want to be and respectful to some of the folks that have been very, very generous to us. But for us, we try to be very, very transparent, right? It's more than a sticker on the car.
It's a relationship with
We're
that.
we want you at the racetrack. We want you to experience the highs and lows. We want you at the picnic. We want you at the picnic. And if you can't be there in person, we want to share that story with you when we see you next time. We want to know that you are part of the family, right? Like, this is not about going out and putting stickers on cars, albeit important, right? We want to have brand recognition for the folks that believe in Spike and believe in his journey and want him to succeed and want to be part of the picnic. But we love the opportunity to have people with us sharing the journey.
Mm-hmm. And Spike has some very, very amazing relationships with these people that he's cultivated the friendship. You know, people of, you know, all different kinds of businesses, all different age groups of friends that he has cultivated these friendships with. And he gets a lot of mentoring from them that is phenomenal. You know, a lot of these people are very successful business owners, and he gets to benefit from like just absorbing their energy and their passion. And once again, these are people that know nothing about motorsport, but they are passionate about someone who cares that much about succeeding.
Don't you think it's a two-way street though, too?
Yeah.
Because I feel anyone on the other side of that table from Spike always has a fascination or appreciation for high-performing people and somebody that is sacrificing and chasing a dream. I think there's so much complacency in the world, or just lack of direction. When they see it, it's almost an encouragement to them. as well. I think it's a two-way relationship. So we are in the Margay showroom here. You know, I know Margay has been a huge part of your journey, you know, and I know every time I'm around you, it's a huge part of your history and today, and just there's a lot of loyalty there. So like how are they involved? For most people that are not from St. Louis or not part of the local karting scene, I had no idea who they were until we bought a go-kart, and you know, and I'm finding out that it's a much bigger thing than our local track here.
Well, lifelong family friends of ours, the family that owns this business, and now Keith Freeber's the third generation owner. So I've grown up knowing the family and going to races, you know, Keith's races and all the people that he raced with my whole life, like as a kid growing up, because our families were so close. So Margay and the brand has been in my life. You know, I know his grandfather who founded the business, and then his dad, who's very good friends with my dad. And so yeah, it goes way back. And this is where it started for Spike, and Margay's been really good to him in the sense of, you know, he's been a factory driver since he was little, so 10 years, right?
Yeah, I like that. I think you know, as I think about when you said factory driver, the accountability that you have as a young driver, you know, you're representing something, you know, you're representing a brand, you're representing a family, you're representing
Bigger
a
than
community.
yourself, yeah.
Something bigger than yourself. And, you know, when I think of Margay and Keith Freeber, that's, you know, Spike is the foundation of Spike Kohlbecker Racing is built on that sort of principle, right? Like they gave him an opportunity to represent the family, the brand, the community, and Margay, and that's just invaluable.
Because it's a national brand. It's not just a St. Louis thing. And there's been a lot of hugely successful names that have come from a Margay kart, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, and I
on.
think Margay karts have been shipped all over the world. I think New Zealand has Margay karts, and I know at some of the races, like there's been guys, Kiwis that have come over to race, and guys from Australia have come over to race. So I think the Margay brand is known in other parts of the world as well.
So at St. Pete, I wore Spike's shirt the whole weekend. And I can't tell you how many people came up to me and like pulled me aside and was like, Kiwi, are you a Kiwi guy? Like, you know, and asking tons of questions. Several of them knew who Spike was, you know, which was interesting. They recognized,
yeah,
you know, all of the logos. I had no idea any of them. You know, I was just there supporting you guys. But
yeah, we've had some, you know, speaking of great companies that have supported Spike, CFX is a company based here in St. Louis that is branding, marketing, advertising, and they've put a creative touch on the Spike Kohlbecker Racing brand that has also been very invaluable.
Gotta have a brand. Gotta have a brand. So we've joked about this in the past. Have you ever considered starting a team to make that next step easier, more complicated?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, I think a great deal of respect for team owners, set aside if it's go-karts or IndyCar or everything in between. Great deal of respect. It is it's a challenging business model, I'm sure, from what I see. Stay tuned. Never know.
That's how Horner got started.
Never say never.
He was a driver without a team, so he started the team and realized he was a better team manager than driver. And
there you
yeah.
go.
Well, I know I'm a bad driver, so that part I know.
So how do people find you? How do sponsors find you guys and support this journey and story?
Spike Kohlbecker Racing. You know, he's got an awesome you know, presence in the marketplace, thanks in part to CFX, the company that I mentioned before. It's been a long time sponsor of Spike. Yeah, great people. I think his brand is well recognized. I think he's very happy and proud to, wear the hashtag STL made, St. Louis made on everything that he does. And so just invite you to reach out to Spike on any of those channels. Amy and I are available too. If you care to talk to the parents, we'd love to, to find ways to give back. There's been a lot of people that have been very good to us. So happy to chat with anyone that cares to hear more about us and our journey.
Anybody that wants to have a 3-hour cup of coffee with you,
Yeah.
I tell you, it's worth every minute.
We can make it
Right.
shorter.
Just remember, Amy's the
Necessary.
motorsports guru, not me. So make sure she shows up.
What can the world of motorsports do to help you guys? I mean, if anybody listening, if there was something somebody could do or whatever.
It's really simple. I think we would welcome the opportunity to just sit down and have that cup of coffee. We'll be respectful. Won't be the 3 hours unless you want it to be 3 hours, but and you may get the whole family, right? We would love to sit down and have the chat. I think many people have given us that opportunity. Hopefully more do. Hopefully more people here in the St. Louis give us that opportunity to sit down and have that cup of coffee and just hear our journey, hear what our goals and objectives are, and more importantly, hear from Spike. And we'll
Meet the driver.
meet the driver. Many people have given us that opportunity, and we're grateful for that.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for all this. This is different than my studio at the house. So
Thank
this
you.
has been a
Thank you.
phenomenal experience and great to hear your story, and can't wait to share it.
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you.